This week's episode of Modern Art Family Tree is brought to you by the Foster Gallery. The Foster Gallery is a gallery in Worcester, Massachusetts, who specializes in paintings, drawings, and prints. Find them at www.thefostergallery.com. Okay. All right. Hey everybody, this is Matt Foster, and this is the latest, actually, not just the latest, Dennis. This is episode 10.
Whoa,
Yeah.
10 episodes.
Episode 10 of Modern Art Family Tree, and my co-host and partner in crime, Dennis Hart, sporting the Boston Bruins for the playoffs.
We're gearing up for this afternoon's game.
That's right. It's going to be a good one. But yeah, this is big episode 10, which landmark. So yeah. So how do we celebrate episode 10? By doing Camille Pissarro.
Works for me.
Okay. So the down and dirty on Camille Pissarro in general is definitely an impressionist. Was definitely a influential and well-regarded guy among the artists.
A central figure.
That's a good term, central figure. And I think one of the things that we were talking about before the show is that he's considered by some as a father figure, and one of my faves, Cezanne, considered him a father figure. And I think the easiest thing that I would like to say about him is that he was a consistently good painter. But let's get into him. I mean, I got to admit, I'm not the biggest authority on Pissarro. I do like Pissarro, but as far as his drama, personal life, and all that stuff, I don't know a whole lot about.
It doesn't come up that often, though, so there must not have been a lot of drama.
Yeah, it really doesn't. He seems like, the perception I've always had of him was he was a pretty happy-go-lucky kind of guy, and that he was, an avid painter, obviously, and was well liked by his peers. So you don't ever hear about him, stabbing some guy in the back over a painting or something, or anything crazy like that. What's that?
Or cutting his ear off.
Right. Shooting himself in the stomach and dying 3 days later.
No, I really have never heard any of any kind of drama in his life. I don't even really know what kind of childhood or what kind of what his parents did or any of that stuff. So maybe you know that. I don't know.
Not really. Not really at all.
It doesn't seem to come up. It's like his big thing is what he's known for is being sort of that central guy who had been taught by Corot and there's another one of our earlier podcasts, Courbet.
Yeah.
Courbet and Corot had taught him, so he's obviously had contact with the very early part of what we're considering, modern art.
So was he actually an actual student of Courbet, or did he just like Courbet?
I thought he was a student of his.
Oh, well, that's actually kind of unique because Courbet, he did have students that I'm aware of, but it wasn't like a norm for him. So that's interesting. Well, before we get into his paintings, I'm going to bring up the photo that I sent you, Dennis, and this is the picture of him with Cezanne at Pissarro's garden, at Pissarro's house, I would assume, And the reason I bring this up is this was always brought up to us in art school as one of those photos that kind of captured a lot because it showed his relationship and him being with the guys. He definitely was kind of a father figure to a lot of the guys, right? And Cezanne was quoted as saying that he was like a father figure.
Mm-hmm.
And then this picture really kind of shows it that way, doesn't it?
It does.
So
he appears to be the guy that they're all looking up to or listening to.
I agree. The other thing that I'd like to bring up, and people can Google search the Impressionists for photographs of the Impressionists. But there was actually a style for these guys who were being the plein air artists, right? And it was the wide brim hat because you're out in the country. The beards, the way the beards were was actually like a stylistic look at the time, you know. The clothes that they wore, the boots because they were out in the wood, you know, all of this was like quasi. I always kind of view it as somewhat frontiersman meets some kind of like, you know, academist, you know, like a botanist or something. But this was an actual intentional look, right? I mean, this was not how you would just hang out at the bar. This was like a guy on a mission out in the woods to go do something. So this would be like a lumberjack or something today. Like you can tell when those guys come into the diner and they're not dressed like they're just hanging out in the office. So this was a thing, and I think that this also kind of shows that too, is that both him and Cezanne, you know, are wearing the kind of clothes that were not normal for them just hanging out, and they both have the whole gig going on. They got the overcoats, they got the not overcoats like a dressy coat, but like a barn coat type thing. They have the boots, they have the big hats, they got the beards, they kind of got the whole deal going on, you know. And you can find pictures of Monet this way, right? You can find pictures of Renoir this way. Not as much like Manet and those guys, because those guys were like inner city guys. But all the landscape painters, you could definitely find this. True enough?
That's true enough. I mean, I can't say that I've seen one of every outdoor impressionist painter that I know of, but I have seen a lot of these type of pictures, and that does seem to be the type of dress that you see, and it makes sense. I mean, really, fishermen. What do you first think of when you think of a fisherman? Yellow coat, hat, right? Because
Right.
they get wet. So
Right.
you dress to deal with whatever elements you're up against. And I mean, you're going to go out and paint in nature. You're probably going to have to walk through some tall grasses. So you probably don't want to be wearing open-toed shoes. Not that men did anyways, but you know, you get my point. The boots probably really help with that.
Exactly. Well, and if you were to reflect it as today, I mean, the way I explained it, you know, to my kids at least, was, you know, anybody can go camping today. You don't have to dress a certain way to go camping and be successful. But of the times, it's not uncommon to see a camper wear things like the North Face or certain kind of pants or, you know, hiking boots. Doesn't mean you have to wear hiking boots, but it's the fad to wear those because it's technically helpful today. You know what I mean? That kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, you don't want to be walking up mountains with, you know, rocky terrains or whatever and be wearing running shoes.
Yeah,
flip-flops.
Exactly. Right.
Because it's not going to do you any good. Or you might have to step in a small stream to get across. Your feet might, you know, go in the water. Do you want to be wearing something that's not semi-waterproof or fully waterproof?
Right.
So, yeah. So, that, I mean, that totally makes sense. They were smart. And I've painted outdoors enough. I know I've had way too many sunburns on my head. So the hat's a smart thing. And these guys look like they're kind of follically challenged like me. So...
I was going to ask you. So is that what happened? Was the sunburst? Yeah.
It's possible. It's possible because I know the first few times I got sunburns on my head, I still had enough hair.
So yeah. Well, anyways, that was the only reason I threw the photo in there. Is one, I've always loved this photo because of my interest in Cezanne, but two, it kind of shows what the general attire was like for these guys. So what do we want to hit first? You want to hit the colorful? I guess that's a horrible way to describe any painting, isn't it?
Well, I know which one you're going to say. You're talking about. I would like to start with the earlier. So that's like the landscape with the horse-drawn.
Yes. Yep. And so this one, I mean. Go ahead and start talking about it because you were already starting to describe it.
My first impression of this painting, knowing enough of Pissarro's work, which is again, he's more known for this more impressionist look to his work and beyond impressionism. So this to me really shows the sort of influence of Corot. I see Corot here, and you can. I think you can see it, and it's earlier. You know, I think it says 1872. I'm not 100% sure on that, but it's less, the brushstroke is less pronounced. You know, that there are actually some flatter tones in here. But compositionally, you know, this sort of sets up a lot of what you're going to see from Pissarro throughout his life. I mean, compositionally, it's very interesting. It's very, it's well set up. It's the entire thing is active enough. It speaks to him. It's just you can see it's sort of more of an earlier piece of his.
I would, yeah. Well, it is an earlier piece of his, and I agree with the Corot. I mean, you could definitely tell he was studying under Corot, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this would be something I would almost be challenged to say, hey, Corot probably told him to paint this, you know, like it's that much like a Corot, you know.
Yeah. Or maybe he did it to satisfy his teacher, you know, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
But his work probably, in general, at this point in his life was probably more like this. He hadn't, I don't think anybody at this point in time was really pushing that idea of you know, the brushstroke and letting the eye combine colors and all that stuff. That came a little bit later.
Right. You know, and the swiftness of application is a big one for this time period for all those impressionists, is this idea of not glazing but just putting things right on. You know what I mean? That kind of thing.
Yeah, that is kind of another modern trait. There's no layering and glazing and transparency and any of that sort of stuff. But some of that's out of necessity, because these guys that now could take their paints outside were struggling with how quickly light and shadow changes. So they were definitely forced to work on a time constraint, which was not, that they're never in history, I don't think has, I mean, unless you're commissioned to do a piece in it and they need it very quickly. Right. But for the most part, painting has been, you get it done when you get it done, and sitting outside where shadows move so quickly because the sun is changing and the light is changing, these guys were forced to kind of come up with some really, you know, cut corners, so to speak, you know, and no, we're not going to layer, we're going to mix a color, we're going to put it down because we don't have time to try to really build these things up.
I'm really drawn to the tree trunks in this painting. I mean, that's really, I mean, I do like the structure of the painting, but I'm actually really fascinated by how he, especially the three on the right, that treatment of those tree trunks, you know, the way that they meander up through the sky and everything, you kind of, you know, not to give him more credit than maybe he was posing to do, okay? But I mean, some of this, you get the sense, like, years later, what the fauves and stuff will do, where they're literally just making a mark and that becomes the tree trunk, you know, that kind of thing. This kind of has a little bit of inkling of that. I mean, I know he's still pushing the shadows out to the side, and you'll see that in, like, the Cézannes, right? Where he treats the tree trunks and stuff this way. But some of the modulation in color and how it's literally like one brushstroke wide on the tree trunks, creating that part of the tree. It kind of makes me think of like the Braque paintings of later, and some Matisse's and things, you know.
There's two that echoes what I said earlier. Actually, it echoes two things. It echoes the sense of urgency to get it done in short time. The most efficient use of your brushstroke is going to help you get this thing accomplished in less time. But the other part of it is, you know, modern art and painting was thought of as, let it be the medium that you're using. So if you can show viewers how that's constructed from a paint stroke and not try to be deceptive about that in any way. I mean, this is a paintbrush. This is a paint stroke. I'm doing this with a paintbrush, and I want you to know that. That's a very modernist idea as well.
Yeah, very much. All right, cool. You want to move on to the next one?
Yes.
Let's do, so the next one I've got up here is The Orchard.
Okay.
And now this, and I think, I mean, let's just get it out there, is a lot of these are going to be of a very similar feel type. I mean, when we say he was a consistent painter, thematically in general, he did not, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, outside of experimenting with some different styles of application, Pissarro wasn't really a guy who went through like phases where he was doing, you know, circus life, and then for 3 or 4 years, and then did orchards, and then did fish scenes. I mean, he was in general fairly consistent with being a outdoorsman, kind of like either outdoor city life or outdoor country.
Right, but between those two things, I think, I mean, there is a thread in that. I've never seen just raw, I've never seen a painting of his, and I'm not saying one doesn't exist, but I've never seen a painting of his that is just raw nature. There's always some human intervention.
That's a good point.
And this is like a low level of that because it's an orchard. It's very much, I mean, sure, orchards are what? Planted. I mean, they're planned and all that. So it's not like orchards happen and we just move into them and pick apples. We plant and we line up the trees and all that. So that's definitely human intervention. But, aside from it not being architecture, right? There's really very little in the ways of architecture in this. There's something off in the distance. I think it's actually a tall tree. So I'm not sure that I see any architecture whatsoever.
Right.
But there's a path that's been cut through this orchard, and there's people kind of working in there. And
that's interesting that you say that, Dennis, because until you just said that, I never thought of it that way. But you're right; it's always manicured kind of nature. It's somehow managed nature. It's never just the wild.
Right, and this is a low level of that. I mean, you could say it's a low level of human intervention because it's a lot of nature,
right.
Even though it might not be natural nature. I don't know if that makes any sense or not, but then you get to some of his very dense city landscapes, cityscapes. I mean, that's vastly different than this, in my opinion. So even though he's always been more a landscape artist, I mean, maybe there's no deviation from that. You do get variation in the way he's, in the subjects that he's chosen to focus on. And I mean, the complexity of some of these later cityscapes is pretty impressive.
Oh yeah, I actually really get into the cityscapes. I guess my point being is that you'll never see a still life from him, or you'll never see a. Now, right. I have seen one portraiture from him that was a straight up real portraiture, and I've seen a self portrait.
Yeah, most artists would play around with that,
but they weren't like his thing. You know what I mean?
Definitely not. And I don't think he's known for that. And I think that's okay. I think that's actually, there's something to be, I'm kind of an everywhere type of person, and I'm not just talking about in art. I'm talking about in my life. And I often wish that I would just say, what's my one thing, and just spend all my time on that, know? So there's something to be said for the fact that maybe he was able to do that.
Yeah. So let's talk to this more specifically. I mean, like, do you still see the Corot influence in this? I mean, I do. Yeah, so do I.
I think it's still early enough that influence is still there. He's starting to. You can see if you look at, compare it to the last one, there's a bit more freeness in the brushstroke. I don't think that's a lot, but like just the way he's dealt with the blossoms on the trees, and they seem a bit freer. We get that they're blossoms, and I don't know. I mean, maybe that's more. The flowers lend themselves to that treatment more than it was a conscious decision. I'm not sure, but no, I mean the shadows, the way the dirt, the ground doesn't look flat so much as it did in the other, right? It's got more active brush strokes in there, and I think he's starting to break out of the flatness a little bit in this, but it's still a long way. I mean, between this and what he ended up with, I think there's still a long road for him.
I really like the color palette in this one. I mean, I like the idea that it's not an explosion of every kind. It's not the scientific coloring that you see with some of those of the later Impressionist stuff. It still carries over some of those Corot kind of color choices and things, if you ask me.
Very earthy.
Yeah, but I actually kind of like that. Like it you know what? It gives you a different sense of distance for the things in the background and stuff.
The distance is amazing, right? I mean,
it really is.
There's such a great, and it's not, a lot of times you see the use of blue to be the you know, like things get hazy blue off in the distance, and when we see that in paint, it really sets things back. And this is done more with a green, you know, and it still sets the distance sets way back there. So
it's a very warm painting too.
Yeah, in general warm, but there's really nice light. If you look at that tree in the foreground with all the blossoms on it, but if you get to the trunk of it, just look at the way the light hits the side. There's a light on the side, the shadow. I mean, that to me is very real, and it's just got a nice, you know, it looks like the light's actually probably coming closer from behind him than it is from the side, right? Because the shadow that's being cast onto the ground seems to go more back than it does to the right or to the left.
Yes,
but
I agree with that.
But you can still see a little bit of that shadow on the right side of the trunk, and it just that alone just sets the dimension off on that one tree. It just sits there very, very well.
I also like the care given to the trunk, and then the looseness given to the ground really makes that trunk pop. You know, like really makes it stand up.
It gives it more solidity. You're right. I mean, really, I'd rather get hit by a tree than fall onto the ground. But in this case, I want to fall onto that ground more than I want to get hit by that tree.
You guys heard it first here.
We should do one of these podcasts.
Dennis would rather hit a tree than the ground normally.
It seems like I'm always drinking coffee when we do these podcasts. Let's do one of these later at night when I could be drinking other beverages. Let's see how that.
You know, I'd rather get hit by a tree. Really? I don't want to get hit by either one.
Typically, I wouldn't think of a tree as hard as the ground, but in this case, it looks like the tree is way harder than the ground. That's kind of my point.
Yes. I wouldn't want to mess with it. Now, as far as future influence, I mean, I definitely see some Van Gogh going on here. With the now you make a face like you don't see that. I mean, the guy walking away from the smaller tree. That looks like an early Van Gogh kind of application.
You know, the stance of the figure too. I can kind of see it now that you say it. And actually, you know, I wonder if he's not. There may be some Millet. There's maybe some Millet reference in here as well. I don't know about any connection between these two, but there's a similarity to the people working the fields, and I don't know. I mean, Van Gogh's later, so if anything, it may be that Van Gogh would have.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm saying that Van Gogh would have been influenced by this.
Okay, all right. That's where the confusion was. I wasn't sure if you were saying like.
Yeah, no. I definitely Pissarro was earlier. Yes. I mean, they lived in the same time, but Pissarro was definitely painting first.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of what happens beyond Impressionism, right? Because I would kind of give Van Gogh. He would almost more solidly fall into what we would classify as the post-Impressionism thing, right?
Yep.
And so he kind of was. The nice thing about Pissarro is he's kind of somebody who you can see through all of these phases, right? Like pre-Impressionism, full-on Impressionism, post-Impressionism,
right?
And the variations that came beyond that. So he's a nice artist to look at for that sort of, the influence that came from before and during and after.
He's like a tour of Impressionism.
The sampler.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he's the cheese platter of Impressionist.
So if you really want to know what type of Impressionism you like the best, look at Pissarro and then determine what part of
tell us which paintings of Pissarro's you like, and we'll point you in the right direction of artist, right? That's cool. So let's if we're done with this one, or was there more?
No, I was just going to say I'm ready to move to another.
Okay. Let's go to the street scene that is with the it's the cityscape that has the oh wait a minute, actually let me do this by year. So is this
that's what
I'm sorry, let me correct myself. Do the bridge over the in Rouen, rainy weather is what
right. Yeah, that's what I think is next in the order of.
Sorry about that. I had that one and the next one reversed. So this in my mind, now we're getting into more like, I know the other two were definitely impressionist paintings still. This kind of deals more in the colors and the application of like a Monet type impressionism.
I believe this is like 1896. Does that sound right?
Yes. Yep.
So yeah, it's a bit later than the ones we've previously looked at, like by a decade, anyways. Right?
By 10 years. Yeah. Yep.
A decade, or even, and then the first one we were talking 2 decades beyond. So
Yep.
so you can see how much it's changed, right? The brushstroke is far more pronounced here. It creates a bit of a hazy look and feel. Now we know that this bridge is not right in our face, so it kind of probably would look a little hazy.
Right.
But as things get further back, they're even more hazy. And I mean, he can use the little brushstroke, the technique to sort of accent that, which is nice. But it definitely, you're right. It's more that sort of we're full on in Impressionism now, and this is what we think of in Impressionism.
Well, and even the motif is dramatically Impressionism with the amount of water, the city at a distance. You know what I mean? The smokestack going through. These are all like really classic motif type things for an Impressionist painting, right?
Right, and how light, is how light affects the structure of the bridge. I mean, maybe it's trees in some paintings, maybe it's buildings in other paintings, but in this case, I really think that the emphasis of light is how the sort of base points of that bridge are hit by the light.
Yeah,
I mean, that's definitely the most exciting thing to me. And that's up to everybody else's opinion, but I feel like that must have been what excited him to sit down and do this. Possibly a lot of that reflection too is kind of interesting. Maybe he wanted that. Could have been documenting how busy this place was. It looks like there's a lot of work going on too. There's like some kind of crane there in the foreground. Yeah. People standing around on the edge there, and people watching over the edge of the bridge. The bridge doesn't really look like it's complete.
Well, let's talk about that, because this is one of the things that I'm actually drawn to this painting about. Is there's a lot of you already mentioned it, Dennis. There's a lot of busyness going on in this painting. Like, it's a very entertaining painting as you draw around it, because there's all kinds of shapes, there's all kinds of colors, there's all kinds of, and it does the zigzag, right? For perspective.
Yeah.
And then not to be an art nerd, but the perspectives are off. They are not correct. So the little shack in the lower right, that perspectively is wrong.
Well, and the two braces of the bridge there underneath, if you try to follow those back,
they're wrong.
You have to believe they're going to be parallel to one another, but I don't think that they're actually...
They don't, no, that bridge, if you were technically going to draw it out on a computer, that bridge would get narrower as it's going away because it's receding too fast.
Right, and those braces are not perfectly parallel to one another, at least the way he's drawn them, and I have to believe they actually are.
So I mean, I think it's kind of a funky painting for him, really. And I don't say that in a weird, bad way. I mean it in a good way. The other thing that I love is like the boat, which to me is kind of funny because that boat looks like it's sinking. like that boat in the river, not the one docked, but the other one.
Yeah, it does.
If someone told me this was a painting of that boat going down for the last time, I would believe it.
It's because I'm guessing it's because he's got the reflection of the boat and the side of the boat so close that you can't tell where it ends and where the water begins.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but with all that said, and again, I say those things because I like them as much as I'm pointing them out. I like the incorrect perspective does not hurt the painting, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Well, compositionally, I mean, that Z thing you're talking about it's like, once you see that, you feel like, wow, that's actually quite powerful. And he cuts it up with that smoke coming up through it, which it just sort of blocks out a lot of the it cuts the bridge in a third to 2/3.
Yeah.
And then it kind of blocks up the back half of whatever landscape would be off the riverbank on the left side of the river.
Yeah. I mean, it's a hypnotizing, that zigzag to me, I just can't, my eyes can't stop following it. Like, I keep starting at the bottom of the painting and I keep following it up like unwillfully. You know what I mean?
But and if this were done today, which 1896 is not recent, but if it were, I would just say, oh, there's no way somebody sat out and painted that. They took a photo and brought it to the studio, and I wouldn't even really have a problem with that.
Yep.
But he didn't do it that way. There's no way he did it that way. So he sat out there in the rain, I guess, and he probably did paint quickly, and that's going to lead to some of the distortions that we see. Others of them, he just might have felt like were sort of necessary to make the painting what he wanted it to be. He maybe thought, I got to squeeze this bridge. Maybe he squeezed the river tighter so that he could actually have the bridge almost look like it connects to land on the other side to follow up that Z pattern that you're talking about. There may be compositional choices that he made, compromises that he made to pull off something that he really saw as important.
As important to the vision. Yeah. I mean, I could see if I was pretending that I was having the fight that I always call every conversation with a painting a fight, but if I was having the fight with this painting over that reflection of the bridge in the water, and if I started making that any lower, I would lose some of that water would flatten out. And I'm wondering if he had to augment his bridge to fit that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The layers of cake were getting too short, and he had to put it somewhere. And I'm wondering if he was just, I mean, again, this is all speculation. This is just us talking about it, but you're exactly right, though. You could feel a little bit of the fight in this painting that he must have had to make some choices that were compromising to what he saw to make it all work.
And when you're talking about a time-constrained painting, that's going to happen.
Yeah, it's part of the gig.
No question about it.
So I really do like this painting. I think it's a great painting. I mean, it's very entertaining. This is one of those paintings that when people talk about revisiting a painting, when I'm always trying to find ways to explain to people how you look at a painting for more than 2 minutes. You know what I mean? You gotta be able to look at it over and over and over again many, many times. Some paintings are easy to do that with because they're so entertaining. Some paintings you got to drill into.
Yeah, actually, now that I think about this, he probably isn't actually outside painting this. He's probably doing it from a window.
Because of the height? Are you saying that because of the angle it's at?
Yeah, he's up so high. Like, unless he's on the roof, he's probably inside. I mean, maybe he's on the roof, but
yeah,
there's no way he's just standing somewhere. I mean, where would you be standing unless there's like a balcony off a building?
Right.
So it's just interesting.
Yeah, no, that is interesting. He could have been on stilts. You don't know. With a really long tripod.
Those really tall unicycles, and he could just sort of stand up at his...
Yeah. And that's why it's off slightly. He was trying to keep balance.
At any minute he could fall over, so he really had to work fast.
That's right. It's the old Steve Martin joke. People aren't impressed until they realize he did it in one stroke. So, okay, let's move to the one with the street scene of the square. Well, I'm assuming it's a city square. That's what it looks like to me.
Yeah, it's got a fountain and everything in there, so I believe it is.
Yeah. Now this kind of this is what you were, I think the last one was very much this way too, but this is what you meant by the motif reaching into the cities and being a very different place, but it has a similar treatment, similar idea of how to put people in, all that stuff. I do love the placement of people in this. I mean, I love how it's kind of this organized. It doesn't feel like a mess, but it feels like a busy street still.
Yeah, there's a lot happening.
It is.
And you could question some of the perspective on it. There's some distortion, but I think it's a nice distortion. I think it's a thought out distortion as opposed to a haphazard distortion.
Yeah, and really the distortion kicks in for me on the very bottom fourth of the painting, bottom quarter.
Yep. It starts to fall forward, right?
Yeah, if you cut that out, it would be pretty rock solid.
Yeah, you cut. I mean, you can almost see how this is maybe not a perfectly round planet, but
right.
You can see rounding of the planet. It's almost like a fisheye lens to some degree.
Yeah.
Based on what happens in the foreground.
Now in this one, what you had mentioned was treated differently in that second painting of the orchard. This one does kind of have that hazy blue receding atmosphere effect.
Yep, atmospheric perspective, yeah. I see it more here. It's still less blue than you see a lot of artists use, but it's definitely hazy blue in the back, especially that far back building. But he kind of does it for about, I don't know, 3/4 of that left side of the road up there, right?
Yeah.
It's like that first building on the corner is kind of crisp and clear, and then the very next one gets much hazier.
Yep.
And it fades its way back. Even the inside of the building on the right side of the road there starts to fade pretty quickly too.
Yeah, I would say in the same increment. That first building's okay, and then it kind of like has a line drawn, and then it becomes,
Right. Yeah. He really wanted to separate, and I think the title of it's something about an opera house, or is it just Avenue?
It's the Opera Avenue. Yeah.
Opera Avenue.
Avenue of the Opera.
So I don't know if that building way off in the distance is the opera, where.
I don't know.
But it's almost like he's given some of these buildings more preference than the others. I'm not sure why. More clarity.
It's funny though, because of the haze effect, they kind of look like the same building just going back.
Yeah, which is probably how it was. Yeah, I mean they were probably all built around the same time, which means the style is going to be pretty close.
But I like the action. I think that the treatment, and going back to like the distortion and perspective, things like that, those kind of things that are going on in this painting actually kind of help this disbursement of the little pieces all over the place. You know what I mean? I have no expectation that all these people are sitting properly in their space.
Right.
And because of the treatment of the people, they become more like, not to abuse the term for Impressionism, but these ephemeral flecks of personalities, kind of ghosts floating in and out of the area,
Yep.
And the way this painting's treated, they feel very natural in that environment.
I'd also like to point out that through much of the paintings we've talked about today, except maybe the last one, and so I would lump that last one in with this one, that this is where we start to see, I think, as much as you're going to see a more the most unique side of Pissarro. In other words, you don't look at this and say, you're less likely to confuse this with any other artist than him. Yeah. Whereas the other ones, you can always say, well, he's kind of painting a lot like Corot, or he's looking more like Monet, but in these two, I don't think I would ever think Monet painted this. I don't think I would ever think. I certainly wouldn't think Corot would have painted it. I think this is if he really truly did ever find his unique thing. I'm guessing this is around that time. I mean, these are the things that he was doing when as much as you could say he's sort of a central guy and everything kind of spins around him, which prevents him from standing out. Right? I mean, for the most part, we would probably agree on that.
Oh yeah.
He's not one of the most unique guys just because there's so many directions of other artists around him that he's sort of just right in the middle of it. So it's hard to separate him from any of it. But I have to say, I feel that these are the ones that are more uniquely him than anything. I want to look at these and say, from a practical point, I mean, for what this podcast is one of our purposes, is to kind of educate. And so one thing we should try to do here is see how this work may have influenced others. And the only thing I can think are some of the fauves. And it sounds crazy because how would you see that in this? But it's more about the subject, I think.
I would say, but the fauves had a lot of. I agree with you. First of all, I want to make sure that that's clear. Is that I think you're very much right that this is it's a wonderful point, Dennis. That this is probably one of the few that we could have picked out that is clearly like, you're right. This is not Renoir. It's not Monet. It's like anyone looking at it knows that this has got to be a Pissarro, or someone that is not as famous as Pissarro. You know what I mean? That kind of
or somebody who wishes they were Pissarro.
Right, exactly. But I will also say is that the fauve thing, and for people who don't know, fauves are not just this little niche of 2 or 3 guys. It's a good amount of people still.
It's later, and it's a spin-off of what he was doing.
But it's Fauve normally is geared towards people. People think of Fauve originally with the crazy color choices, right?
Well, that was a big part of it.
It was, but I would profess that Fauve had a lot of expressional kind of mark making also.
Yes.
That was less regurgitating what you were seeing, and more about fitting the mood of the environment that it was in.
If
That makes any sense.
It's an extension of the pure color as well, though, like the pure color that the Impressionists were trying to experiment with to create a natural light. They said, why, and take this from not the professor, not the masters in art history or anything like that, because I don't have those degrees, but I think they're kind of saying, we've experimented with color to create natural light. Why does it have to be natural, right?
Right.
Let's go beyond natural. Let's hyper activate these colors and see what we can do with that. So
and invent what we can with the color through
create emotion through that.
But I would say that a lot of that has to be paired with mark making, and I think Pissarro's mark making of these, and maybe this is what I'm getting at with all these little pieces going on the floor here, is they're dramatically influenced by the mark making. Look at the horses drawing this carriage that's coming straight at you.
Right. And the shadow.
They're just a mesh up of anything.
Yeah. But we know what it is.
You only know because of everything else going on.
Yeah.
And
but if you cut that little square out with that piece in it, would we even be able to discern what that is?
Exactly. That's my whole point, right? That's my whole point, is that if these were little character studies on the road, they'd be pretty much useless to you, But as a thing, as them hinging together as a community, it looks perfect, that kind of thing. So, but I couldn't agree with you more, Dennis. I think this is very, very Pissarro. This is a very Pissarro thing. And I think as you move into some of the other artists later, you see this kind of thing come up. And I'm telling you, there are artists later than that, in the 60s and 70s and stuff like that you definitely see this stuff too. I would say like post-war artists that were doing, these not abstract but not realism type paintings. They were the new figurative, if you will, right? These are the kind of marks and stuff that I think those guys were in love with,
Yeah.
They just wanted to make it into a scale that the whole painting was that.
I think you'd be hard pressed to find any kind of negative reaction to what he was doing in any post-war art included, which is highly a reaction against most of modernism.
Right.
I would still argue that I think they wouldn't be reacting so much against this idea as others. But I actually want to hear more of your take on my thought that I guess it's maybe compositionally and slightly the brushstroke thing that leads me to say I see how this could lead to the Fauves. Do you think that's out there? Do you think I'm out there thinking that, or do you see that?
No, I totally see it. I think that I'm a big fan of the Fauves, as anybody would know, right? But my interest in the Fauves is as much about their color choices as it is in their application of that color choice.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the Fauves really went to a new level as far as saying, not only am I using this color, but I'm not painting a tree. I am creating the tree out of this stroke of red or whatever.
Yeah, and they're. I mean, if you look at this painting, and I'll see if I can grab some dimensions. I'm not going to be able to, I don't think. But if I could find what its actual size is, I'm guessing.
Oh, I could tell you that. Hold on a second. I have it up here on Wikipedia. It's 73 centimeters by 92 centimeters.
All right. So it's not small, right?
Right.
So if this were done in the Fauve style, you would probably see a lot sort of bigger brush strokes.
Correct.
You would see it would be more pronounced.
Well, I could see a Vlaminck making this painting.
Yeah.
But cut it in half. Just do the lower half. Vlaminck, I just personally, I don't think Vlaminck would have bothered with trying to get the perspective of the deep buildings and all that. He would have, you know what I'm saying?
But
And
you were
maybe
really focused on the square and then nothing more.
right. Or, trying to think of another name that people might know, but,
Terrain?
Van Dongen.
Okay.
Do you know the name? But Van Dongen, if you picture one of these people in the street blown way up,
Oh, okay.
you know what I mean, and be treated kind of like a very expressionistic kind of portraiture almost, you know. And he did a lot of like interiors and stuff like that too, you know. But I agree with you 100%. Is that I think that if you told me, I think that parts of this picture lead to fauve kind of thinking for painting, I would agree with that.
Yeah,
I would
I'm just
definitely
trying
agree.
to be practical about what we're talking about here because we've talked a bit about where he's coming from and how he's been influenced or what's influenced him, but I'm trying to pull out things that we can then see beyond him where he may have had some influence.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of them. I mean, obviously, I haven't really said this yet, but and even in his earliest pieces, I see a lot of Cezanne.
Yes.
So Cezanne clearly was looking at, which we've talked about already, but he was clearly looking at his work and interested in that treatment. And Cezanne's, you know, he's highly known as even post-impressionist. So he falls into impressionism too, but he's got his own thing. He's not like a typical impressionist. So a lot of people classify him as a post-impressionist.
Yeah.
And you've said the thing about Van Gogh, so that's another avenue. I mean, Van Gogh might be the stepping stone between Pissarro and the Fauves, really, because there's
I can see that too.
yeah.
I could see that too because Van Gogh took that step to the color, I think.
Yeah, a bit more bright and vibrant color, but also more pronounced brushstroke as well.
Yes.
He didn't use little brushes for sure. Or he probably did, but you know, his brushes seem bigger than Pissarro's.
Yeah, well, and I think that there was and I hate to say this because it's going to be misunderstood, but the intention of Van Gogh's brushstroke was different from Pissarro's.
Yeah.
The intention of where it led you and what it meant to Van Gogh, I think, was a different intention than Pissarro's. You know what I mean? Van Gogh was never trying to draw the air or paint the air, and I think Pissarro was still in that group of guys that was trying to paint the air to it. It wanted the atmosphere in there, you know.
Right.
I think Van Gogh was trying to give you something very, very crystallized, but he was trying to put his emotional content to it also.
Yeah, there's a lot more emotion in what he was doing, but there's also like a flatness that he relies mainly on the drawing, which, you know, you want to talk about some distortion, right? There's certainly distortion in his. But he relies, as distorted as his things were, he relied on that drawing to create the space more than he relied on the color to create the space.
Correct. That's right.
And I think that would be a pretty big difference between him and Pissarro. But you can also see that there's it's not a big stretch. I mean, from other artists, there'd be a much bigger stretch between them and Van Gogh.
I think the other thing is that Pissarro drags with him some of his cultural past that I don't think a Van Gogh or something was so latched on to.
Right, and that makes sense too, because look at the history of look at his lifespan and his history as opposed to Van Gogh's, who Van Gogh I don't believe was even painting until he was a little bit older anyways.
Right.
So there's a whole different approach that he's got, that he was, in a way, that enabled him to be a little bit less, you know, I hate to say that, having a history and starting with a different mindset at one point of your life and moving through a very active time, because this was definitely a very active time for artists, to move through the periods of it and see it and work through it, how what you had learned and done in the beginning is always going to be present in what you're doing even towards the end.
Oh yeah.
It's going to show up more in a guy like Pissarro than in Van Gogh. Yep. And I, you know, I'm not trying to push things along, but if we look at that other painting, that other cityscape,
Yeah, let's pull. I was just going to say, let's pull that up now.
It's actually, it looks like 97, which would be, this one would actually be a year before the one we were just looking at, I think. which is
Is
hard
that
to
right?
believe.
No, I thought the one we were just. Oh, you're right. God, I screwed that up again, huh?
That's okay though. I would have done the same thing because by looking at it, you wouldn't think that's this.
I
That's
know. I thought
because
this
this
was the
looks.
later one.
This is even pushing more towards the Van Gogh thing, I think, right? Because you
Yes.
see all those, the direction of the road is really pronounced by the brush strokes, which is something you might see Van Gogh do.
Yeah.
Um, it's a similar thing, though. I mean, the paint is thicker here. It's another thing Van Gogh would do, paint with very thick paint, and that's how he helped pronounce those brush strokes. But
Yeah. Well,
but yeah,
the level of contrast is higher here too.
yeah, and it's a little bit more evenly dispersed as far as the atmospheric perspective goes. It's a lot more gradual. There's not really. If I had to pick a line, I'd say maybe what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 buildings in, you start to see a clear cut in the clarity. But for the most part, it seems very gradual. I don't really see a hard difference between one building to the next. It just sort of gradually fades away and gets blurry.
Now, this painting for me feels like the kind of painting, and I'm not saying this about this painting. I'm saying that this theme, this kind of perspective, this kind of treatment becomes kind of like and I don't want to say that it was this painting, so I'm not trying to say that, but this kind of painting was the thing that was mimicked by every dude trying to become a painter later that was not a famous painter. You know what I mean? Like this is the thing, you walk into a rental home in Cape Cod and there's something like this above the fireplace. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like it becomes the quintessential factory motif and application style for the next like 50 years. You know what I mean?
There's many reasons that I think this would be well received at the time. I mean, people, it was, I don't want to say it was like the heyday in Paris, but it was a good time there, right? I mean, people were enjoying, it was a good time for Paris and to have pride in the city and
Oh yeah.
I think that these paintings sort of document some of that, how active it is, how dense it is, how pretty it is, really. I mean,
well, and it was still. I mean, this is an era that it was regarded as the cultural hub of the planet. You know what I mean? Like it was where painters went. It was where the opera was. You know what I mean? Like all those big cultural things were at their high point at this point.
Even beyond culture, though, beyond just the culture. I mean, sure, you can reflect culture in the architecture,
Yep.
but it is like there's a lot of just achievement, human achievement that you see in here. I mean, the architecture, the how many things are going on. The things, the way the roads are dressed. I mean, there's like the nice lamp posts right up the middle of the roads. Of course, once the automobile came around, they probably changed that. But
right.
There's things on the side of the road. I'm not sure what they're like. They look like little bus kiosks, but I'm pretty sure there were no buses buzzing up.
Well, these, yeah, you know what these things are? The posters and stuff. Those are advertisements.
That's all. They were strictly put there for.
Well, I'm ashamed to say this, but they have. I don't even want to say it. I'm not even going to say it. But I've seen these before when I'm in Florida at Disney. Let's put it that way. No, but they have those things set up in Epcot.
Okay.
In France to show and of course I know this is like the most horrible reference for someone who wants to know the real thing.
But you don't have to be ashamed of that. If you're a dad who's taking your kids there, I mean that's that's a commendable thing. You're teaching them about different places.
That think I'm just a Disney file, which I am, but I do honestly like have a home there, so it's like we do live at Disney for like 2 months, But no, I know from Epcot that they have in France, they have these things that were supposed to mimic like what was back in at least the turn of the century, and of course on the ones there they're showing all the old painters, which I always grill my kids. You know what I mean? Oh, hey, look at that, But it looks exactly like these things, which I would assume were advertisements for either operas or shows or something,
Probably a few of Toulouse-Lautrec's posters are in there, and
yeah,
pushing the Moulin Rouge or Jane of Rio.
Yeah, that's right. Wow. So, but this is, I think that this is, I still think the one before this is more the iconic Pissarro look. I think this is still him, don't get me wrong. But I think this is a little more contrasting. A little, the darks on this are a little darker than what I would assume a normal Pissarro would be. You know what I mean?
What I'm really curious about is there seems to be, and I know like the Impressionists had this thing where every color was mixed from close to primary, you know.
Yeah.
His paintings, even from early on, like one of the first ones we showed, and I didn't point it out then only because you never know when you're looking at a reproduction of a painting, right? And this may be true for what I'm about to say here, but I'm really curious about what he appears. It seems to use. He creates some colors very close to black, and
Yeah.
so that's like, you know, you don't see that much in Impressionism, and it's mostly something I'm noticing today. I mean, I had never really looked at his work and thought, oh, you know, he seems to be an exception to the Impressionist rule that you just stay away from that.
Yeah, but if you think of, I mean, if you think of his closest pupil being Cezanne, he not avoided, but he didn't really go too much into that either. You know, are you talking about using purple as the shadow and things like that?
Well, yeah, finding the color in things and mixing your dark tones out of your colors instead of just having black on your palette. Like you would, that was a big no-no. You didn't do that. And right. I mean, I still to this day do not myself. I don't, unless I'm doing a monochromatic painting with grays and stuff, then I'm not using any black either.
You don't put black on your palette at all, huh?
I don't.
Now see that I'm not like that. I have to have black on the palette. And I think it's my response to the Impressionists.
See,
screw you guys! I'm putting black on there.
You're one of those post-war guys who is reacting against what happened in modernism. I still adhere to that. But
do you use a Payne's gray or anything like that?
I don't.
No, so you use all chromatic.
All color.
Hues.
Yeah. I don't have any. I rarely mix. I very, very rarely, and I'm saying this because the just about the only place I ever use a pre-mixed brown is if I tone my canvas. So all my browns and everything like that, I'm usually mixing out of my raw colors too.
Yeah. Well, and I'm like you up until the black thing. I do put black on there, but I don't use any kind of graying out kind of stuff. I'm usually going color to color for all my mixing, and then but I do enjoy my comic book background will not allow me to not do some inking style black, you know.
Yeah, well, that's, you know, that if you have a reason, that's a good thing. I guess I'm thinking maybe Marcia Lloyd was the one who really, really pushed me onto that, because I've seen like some of my other teachers' work, and they seem to use it too. They seem to use black, and I you have to really look close to really see that. You know what I mean? I'm that kind of, I guess being a painter myself, I'm going to look at art that way, where I want to see that I want to dissect it that much.
Right.
But I mean, I don't even really remember where I got that, why I decided to not do it, but I'm thinking it was probably Marcia, and maybe it was because some of the things I've done would actually be, you know, I've had a lot of dark things, dark areas, dark places. So if you use black, it could actually become a crutch and a really it could really limit you. So I'm not sure if that's where it came from or what, but that's just the way I am. And I know that was a pretty common philosophy that it was the philosophy that the Impressionists generally lived by, was that there's no black.
Yes. Yeah, that's very true. As in fact, it's funny. I was reading that book that I was telling you about, and for those listening on this thing, was the Judgment of Paris, which is a fantastic book. But they were talking about how one of the Impressionists actually wrote in a letter that he finally figured out the color of the atmosphere, which was violet, you know, and it was, but it's more to that point of, as much as they said it was a science, which it was, but it was really an exclusion of trying to, you know, make everything black and white kind of contrast, you know. So, well, good. Any fleeting shots on Pissarro? I mean, we actually went. I mean, we're right at an hour now, Dennis.
Yeah, I didn't think we would be able to do that, but we did get into this a little bit more than I expected.
Well, and you know what? Actually, as we kind of flushed it out, I think we didn't really pre-talk at all about how we thought he influenced people, but I think we actually hit that pretty well. So, any other thoughts on Pissarro before we wrap it up?
I don't. I think we've covered a lot.
Great. Okay. Well, that's Pissarro, and that is number 10.
10 in the 10 in the can.
Big ribbon cutting. Yeah. So, well, thanks again, and until next time. I'm not sure who we got next. What were we thinking? Seurat or something, or Sicily?
Those are good. Those are good choices because that's really pushing beyond this point, which I think would be a good direction to go. Let's not promise anything for episode 11, but
Yeah.
we'll revisit our tree and see which way we want to go because we might have to backtrack some and go off a different direction to get
That's
some
true.
earlier. Because have we done the English guys yet? Or
We have not, and I think that it'd be wrong for us to go on without a couple.
right, I don't want to get into post-impressionism until we even deal with like Turner and.
Yes, no, that's really important. And you know what? Talk about someone who loves their blacks. We gotta put those guys in there. So. That's
There's
good.
another English guy I'm thinking of that maybe isn't considered.
Sickert?
No, Constable. Well, he's probably too early for this family tree. I think he's not really modernism, is he?
No, but he was a guy that these guys would reach back to. But I can see where that would be coming from. But we definitely should do Turner. Definitely.
Yeah, I think Turner's huge. We got to do that. So maybe that's next.
Yeah.
Maybe.
All right.
No
Well,
promises.
yeah. No promises, but Turner next time. So, all right. Sounds good. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Thanks. That's it.